My name is Justin Bestman, and we are going to be going over the solutions to the JavaScript portion of the test or assessment. So the first question is, what is the purpose of the keyword this in JavaScript and what does it refer to? So I just wrote out some dummy things here so we can just quickly see what's going to happen. So I wrote a script tag, and I went ahead and I did this dot name and this dot name. So name is referring to this property inside of the object. So let us load this page and see what happens. So notice line 22 compiled hello world. And this went blank because an error, because this dot name doesn't exist here. So let's just do this and see what comes up. And I'm going to just take away the name right here and see what happens when I console log these two thises. Notice the different things that I get. For this, I actually get the entire window object. More information than anybody would ever need, but look at all this information. So I get the entire window. When I do this inside the object, it actually refers to the object itself. So this is a placeholder for the name object. So therefore, that is why we're allowed to do this dot name. And we get hello world. And we could be overly verbose, and we could have done object. And notice that it would do the same thing. So that is what's going on with this. So this refers to the global object outside of a functional context, like an object. And now let's look at the second question, is compare and contrast synchronous to asynchronous code. This is a very important concept to understand because JavaScript is asynchronous. And you're going to, in your programming careers, see code that's synchronous and asynchronous, or other languages that is. So this is a great illustration of synchronous versus asynchronous loading. So notice the synchronous. One happens after another. So operation 1 happens, it finishes, then it starts operation 2, so on and so forth. Synchronous happens like this. Operation 1 starts, and then it branches to operation 2, 3, so on and so forth. And so basically they complete asynchronously, out of order. So synchronous does block execution like the top, one after another. One runs in the order of the other. Asynchronous does not strictly run in sequential order. They run outside of order depending on what completes first. This is a great thing for the web because it doesn't avoid any bottlenecking. Imagine these were all AJAX requests. So imagine we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 AJAX requests. Meaning, imagine if this third one took 20 seconds to load. That means the 4 other ones will be stuck waiting 20 seconds for the third one. This way, the third one can take 20 seconds, but yet all the other ones are loading in time, meaning that your website is coming to take form. All right, so the next question is write a for loop with the iterated value 0 and which runs through 10. So I just write this script.js, I'm writing JavaScript here. So for, just like this. So for loop takes parameters and it's block level code, so you separate the for loop code out by, or herd them in by curly braces. So the first thing we need to write is where we start. So we do var I equals 0, so that will iterate and start at 0. And then we're going to tell it when to stop. And we want this particular code to go 10 times. So it's going to run 10. So I less than 10. And then we need our iterator, which is I++. So basically it says start at 0, end when this is not true, and increment up by 1. So 0 is I less than 0. That's true. I'm going to keep continuing. Eventually it will get 10. Is 10 less than 10? That's false, and therefore it will break out of the loop. So that is how you write a for loop. The next question is to write an object. You don't have to do the name on this one, but we're just going to call it person. And objects are block level code. So block level code, curly braces. And it's name pair value. So the name, we're just going to call name. Semicolon, we separate with a semicolon. And then the name. And then we separate the different name pair values by a comma, not a semicolon. Comma. Age, 29, comma, height, I'm 5'11". Oops, forgot my comma. I have blue eyes. Now, we weren't looking for yes or no here, or the eye color that you have if it's not blue eyes. What we're looking for is a Boolean value, because this is a binary decision. Either you have blue eyes or you don't. So that's why it's a binary decision. I've lived in a lot of cities, so I won't type them all out. I'll just type out a few. I'll just copy them in here. So there we go. And then what we need is a method. Methods are functions that live inside of objects. So then the method name, so this is me. And I have massive OCD, so before I lose control, get this all nice and neat. Now, remember, this is just syntactic sugar. I like everything neat and in order, so you don't need to have it in order just for my sanity. This is me, and we still separate by a semicolon. No equal sign, semicolon. Then the name of what we're doing, which is a function, parameter, if there is any, and then block level code, so curly brace. And now what we're doing is we're just console logging out those different elements, and I'm just going to copy and paste that over so that I don't take up too much time. So there you go. So now this will console log the name, age, height, and city. Oops, this is cities. Now remember, we could have done this .name as well. Both would have done the same concept. All depends on what your preference is or what you need it to do. So I'm just going to quickly compile this on the command line. So this is as if we were seeing it in the console. So it runs, nothing broke. And now let's do person dot, and this is me. Let's see who I am. Oops, forgot my parentheses. There you go. And there you go. My name, age, height, cities where I lived. So that is the answer to the object. Next, let's see if, oh, a little bit crazy right there. Let's evaluate whether my boss and myself are the same age, and if they're not. I'm going to go ahead and just delete this. And then I'm going to do the age. So I'm just going to copy this over. And so now this automatically should strike in your head if. I need an if statement because I'm evaluating whether or not something else is true or false. So if takes parameters, so I'm going to do the parentheses, and then this block level code. So now in this, I'm going to do Nick, and then I'm going to evaluate, remember, not set to equals, but evaluate whether or not I'm the same age. Now, you could have done this, the triple equals, doesn't matter, they would both have the same results. But since I know they're both integers, I'm just going to do double equals. And then I'm console logging, they are, if that evaluates true. Because the default for an if statement in JavaScript is if it's true. And since this is a binary decision, I'm going to do an else. and I'm going to console log they are not if we are not. So let's go ahead and run this. They are not. And let's double check what's going on here and see if it works. They are. So there you go. So that is how you would evaluate whether or not I am the same age as my boss. So the next one is write code that would sum up the elements inside this array. Go ahead and delete this. So I'm just going to copy this over. Oops. Wrong button. So there I have it over. So I need to initialize a new variable called sum. And what that will do is that will hold the value of the sum of the array as I loop through it. And since I need a loop, I'm going to do a for loop. And I already wrote out the stages of for loop, so I'm just going to go ahead and write this out quick. I'll explain the length here in a second. So it's never good to hard code the end value. It's always good to have that dynamic. So I'm going to do numbers.length. So what this will do is it will find the length of that array of numbers. So therefore, it'll be dynamic. So there you go. And just a sanity check, let's go ahead and console log I out. Just to see if it runs, and looks like it's good. It goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. All good there. Even if you're an advanced coder and have done this many, many times, you never know when you're going to make a mistake, so it's always good to do sanity checks. And then what we're going to do is sum, so we're going to keep adding, and I'm going to do plus equals, and then numbers. And I know this isn't quite right, and I'm going to show you why, just so that we have a good idea of why we do the things that we do. Now, I wrote it this way. This would be writing it the same as writing this. Plus equals just makes it a little quicker to write, so we like that. So let's go ahead and save this, and let's go ahead and console log sum out. Notice it did not sum it up. It actually concatenated them, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what it's doing, it's concatenating it to this sum. So what we need is a special thing called parseInt. And parseInt will actually parse a string and make it a number. Now these are numbers wrapped in strings, so it would be really easy. So basically we'll evaluate the string 1 as the integer 1. So let's check this out. And there we go, 15. So 1 plus 2 is 3, 6, 10, 15. Looks good. So this is how you would write out how you would sum up this array. The next question is pseudocoding. So describe the steps that your code would take to find the average of an array. You can assume that the array is non-empty and all elements are numbers. So basically we're saying you're always going to get an array that has numbers and is never empty. So basically you don't need to take that into effect when you're pseudocoding. So step 1 here is to make a variable, and I'm just going to call it var. Okay, so that's going to step to 0. I just realized I wrote that right there. Perfect. Step 2 is I need to loop the array and add up the integers inside. I'm just going to say numbers because they might not be all integers. And then what I need to do is divide by the length. And that would be the answer. So initialize it, initialize a variable that will hold the value as I loop through. Then I loop through. Oops, that's supposed to be sum. I apologize. Sum. Just like that. And then I divide by the length. So that would be the answer to this one. So you are given an array that holds all the grades for the students in the class. Your task is to build a corresponding array for the class that holds true for each student if they passed, which is a score greater or equal to 80, or false if they failed, which is a score less than 80. Describes the steps that you would take to build such an array. Okay, so here we go. So, what I would do here is I would create a new array. And this one would hold the values. Holder of values. Okay. And then, since it's an array, and with an array I usually need a loop, so I'm going to loop over it. Okay, what else do I need to do? Okay, so inside, I would have an if statement that evaluates whether or not whatever I'm looping through in the array is greater than 80. So basically, I'm going to say if statement if grade is 80, and then I'll just have an else, right? Because either it's greater or equal to 80 or it's not. So then I would have inside of the if statement, if statement, if is true, then I would do a push value. So I would do the holder dot push, and then I would push true. And then if else is triggered, I would push false. So that is how I would make this solution for this. So I would do a for loop. It would loop over these. So I'd say it would loop over 50, saying is 50 greater or equal to 80? It's not. So then I would push false. So on and so forth. So that's the answer. So let's move on to the debugging question that we have here. So we're given this thing called checker, which takes in a user and an array as an argument. The function should return true if the user is found in the array and false if it's not. It's not working. Why? Keep in mind there may be more than one error. So first off, what we're missing here is the name of the function. So we need to have the name of the function. So we don't have checker there. Also, we're missing a comma. Remember, HTML and CSS uses breaks to identify elements. JavaScript uses commas. So this would break. The other error is that user and array are in the wrong places. You're running index of on array and to see if user is in the array. So this should be flipped around. It should be array.index of user. The next one is this greater sign. Remember, array starts at 0. So literally, this will only return 0 through the length of the array, or 1 through the length of the array. Remember, as I just said, it starts at 0. So if the user that the user is searching for does live at the 0th element, it would still return false even though it's in the array. So those are the 4 reasons why this code is breaking. Next. The code below throws an error. Explain why the error means in your own words and what lines is causing it to be thrown. So basically, what's going on here? So the variable on which username is being called is undefined. So that's a reason why it's breaking, because this dot username would break there, because user info doesn't exist right there. Identifying where the error occurred, so the error occurred would be on console.log userinfo.username. And you need to use username parameter in the function definition instead of hard coding this dot user equals Rio. And then the return an object with info, you need to use the keyword new before the function is called. So basically, that either you need to return an object with the info or use the new keyword before the function is called. So that is what's going on here. So you would need to use the word new here in order for this to trigger. All right, new problem solving. Write code that would randomly pick an element from any array passed into a function. The function will be called rand element. So I'm going to delete this. So I'm writing a function, so I start with the keyword function, and I'm going to call this rand element. So this will randomly pick any element within the array. Block level code, so curly braces, and it takes parameters, so parentheses. And I'm just going to call it array because that's the type of data structure that I'll be passing in. But you could have named it whatever you'd like. So now what we want to do is we want to pick out a random number. So we'll do random num equals. And then we're using the JavaScript library called math. And we're going to run floor on it so it floors down the numbers. So if it chooses 0.5, it will be 0. If it chooses 1.5, it will be 1. And then we're using math.rand. Random. So this will choose a random number from 0 through 1. Then we're going to times by the length of the array. So basically, if this was a 10 long, if the length of this was 10 elements, be 10 times that. And then we'll round it down. And now simply what we need to do is we just need to return the array with the random number. So this will choose random every time from a given array. So there is the answer. Next, write code without using dot reverse, so the parameter dot reverse, because that would literally reverse them. How would you make a new array called reversed, which is the reverse of the given array? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete what I've written here. So once again, it's a function, so I'm going to start by typing out the word function. Oh, I apologize. This one didn't ask for a function. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy over this one just to double check that I'm working right. And so now I am going to initialize a new array that will handle the reversed. And I'm just going to initialize it to 0. So therefore, reverse knows that it's an array structure. And I'm going to have a for loop. So this is the tricky part. So how am I going to write this for loop? So the easiest way to do this is actually just to start the for loop backwards. So I can equal and then numbers dot length. So dot length here would return 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I initialize at 5. And I need to do -1 here because I need to account for the 0th element. And now I do I, and then I need to go till it hits 0. So greater or equal to 0. And the tricky part here is not to do plus plus, but actually to decrement, meaning that I'm going to decrease. So in this particular case, it's going to start at 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, minus 1, so it's 4. So then 4 will go through, and then it will go down to 3, 2, 1, 0. There's other ways that you can write this without the minus 1, but I like that better because it makes sense to me. But there's other ways that you could have wrote that. And now it's just a simple thing of pushing it in there. So we're going to do dot push and numbers. So basically, oh, apologize, numbers I. So basically it's going to start at this element right here and then push it into here. Go through, decrement, so now I is at here. We're going to go through and then 4. So on and so forth to the point where the whole thing is reversed. So that is how you would answer this question. All right, guys, thank you. Have a good day.